She set the letter down on the piano bench, not because she had finished reading it, but because her hands had stopped cooperating. The letter was from her husband's solicitor. It concerned the Whitmore estate, her father's land, the fields she had grown up walking barefoot through in the mornings before anyone else was awake. The letter used the phrase consolidated under the Reed name upon the occasion of matrimony, and then moved on to other matters with the clean indifference of a document that did not understand what it was saying. Cecily Reed set the letter down and looked at the piano keys. She had not played in 4 days. Not since the dinner party. The dinner party had been on a Thursday. 14 guests, the good silver, the centerpiece she had arranged herself, late summer roses from the back garden, white and pale gold, nothing ostentatious. Mr. and Mrs. Hargreave, the Dunmore family, Judge Percival and his wife, people who mattered to Nathan, which meant people she had spent 2 years learning how to entertain with the particular invisible skill of a woman who understands that the best hostess is the one no one remembers having to thank. The dinner had gone well. She had made sure of it. It was after, in the drawing room, when the women had separated from the men and the port had come out, that Nathan's mother had said what she said. Cecily had been pouring Mrs. Hargreave's tea when she heard it. Mrs. Dunmore had asked, pleasantly, without particular malice, how Nathan had come to choose Cecily, of all the eligible young women in the county. And Imogen Reed, in that particular tone she had perfected over decades, the one that sounded like reminiscing but functioned like surgery, had said, Nathan has always been sensible. He understood that a beautiful wife is pleasant for a fortnight, and inconvenient for a lifetime. He chose well. She had smiled when she said it. Several women had smiled back. Cecily had finished pouring the tea. She had set down the pot. She had crossed to the window on the pretext of checking the latch. It had been a warm night. The windows were all open. There was nothing to check. And she had stood with her back to the room for 30 seconds, breathing with the kind of careful precision she had developed the way some women develop a talent for embroidery. Out of necessity, practiced until it became second nature. Then she had turned around and rejoined the conversation. She had not said anything to Nathan that evening. She had not said anything to him the following morning, or the morning after. She had gone on managing the household the way she always managed it. The accounts, the correspondence, the cook's schedule, the problem with the east wing chimney that the stonemason had promised to address in September, and would need to be followed up on, and she had folded the dinner party into the long quiet drawer, where she kept the things she was not yet ready to open. The solicitor's letter had opened the drawer. She looked at the piano. She looked at the window. Outside, the gardens of Aldenmere were precisely what they always were in September. Orderly, beautiful, maintained by 3 gardeners whose wages she had been budgeting for since January. The roses had peaked. The hedgerows needed trimming before October. There was a list somewhere. There was always a list. She picked up the letter, folded it, and walked to Nathan's study. He was at his desk. He looked up when she came in, and the expression on his face was the one she had catalogued carefully over 2 years of marriage. The expression of a man who is in the middle of something, and is trying to decide whether to stay in it or attend to what has just arrived. He attended. That much was true of him. He attended when called upon. He was not unkind. He was not cruel. He was in the way of certain very capable men, simply elsewhere most of the time. There's a letter from Mr. Cottam, she said. About the Whitmore acreage. Ah, he held out his hand. She gave him the letter. He read it, and his expression did not change. He's clarifying the terms of the consolidation. It's straightforward. My father didn't know what he was consolidating. Nathan was in debt, Cecily said, keeping her voice entirely level. He was frightened. He accepted the terms your family offered because they were offered quickly, and he didn't have time to have them reviewed by anyone who might have explained what he was agreeing to. She looked at her husband. Did your family know the timber rights on the north parcel were unregistered? A pause. Not long. Long enough. I wasn't involved in the original negotiation, Nathan said. No, she said. I know you weren't. She took the letter back. She folded it into her pocket. She looked at her husband, this careful, sensible man who had chosen her because she was convenient and called it wisdom, and she felt something settle in her chest. Not anger, not grief. Something older and quieter than both. I'm going to visit my cousin, she said, in Harwick. Nathan looked at her. Harwick is 4 hours. I know. You've never mentioned a cousin in Harwick. I've mentioned her twice. She had. Once when they were engaged, and once in the first month of their marriage, before she had learned which things Nathan filed, and which things he let pass through him like light through glass. Her name is Vera Ashton, She runs a small printing concern on the river road. She's been asking me to come for a year. He looked at her with the expression she had learned to read as I am present and processing. Not engaged, not disconnected, somewhere between. How long, he said. I don't know yet. He looked at the window. The garden, the roses past their peak. Take Dora with you, he said. You shouldn't travel without. I'll be fine. She paused. I'll write when I arrive. She left the study. She went upstairs, and she packed with the efficiency of a woman who had been deciding what to carry for longer than she had let herself know. 2 wool dresses, practical. Her writing materials. The thin volume of architectural surveys she had been quietly studying for 3 months. The one about property law and original land grants in the eastern counties. That Nathan had never asked about, and Imogen Reed had once looked at and set back down with the careful blankness of a woman filing something away. She packed her savings. Not much. She had been economizing from the household accounts in the small, unnoticeable way available to a woman who keeps the books herself, and who is never quite certain whether she is saving for something specific or simply saving because it is the only control she has. She wrote a note. She left it on Nathan's desk. I have gone to Harwick. The household accounts are settled through the end of the month. The stonemason should be reminded about the east chimney by the 12th. I will write. See. She had almost added something else. She hadn't. The carriage road from Aldenmere to the main post road was 3 miles of pale gravel through flat farmland, and Cecily watched it through the window without seeing it. She was thinking about the letter. She was thinking about Sensible. She was thinking about the morning she had stood in the kitchen of Whitmore House, her father's house. The house where she had learned to read, and argued about poetry, and walked the north fields in September watching the timber grow. And signed the last document, and understood that the house was no longer the house, that it had become an asset in a consolidation. That her understanding of this fact was neither required nor relevant. She had been 23. She had walked into this marriage with her eyes open. She had known it was not a love match. She had not expected love. She had thought, naively, she understood now, that there would be something. Not warmth exactly, not even regard. Something that recognized that she was a person, and not a feature of a well-run household. A person who read things, thought about things, had opinions about the timber rights on the north parcel, and the proper way to construct a budget that would hold across 3 seasonal quarters. 2 years had taught her the difference between a man who did not see you, and a man who had simply decided not to look. Vera Ashton lived in a narrow house on the riverside of Harwick's commercial district, wedged between a cooperage and a bookseller, with a hand-lettered sign above the door that said Ashton Press and Correspondence, and a smell inside like ink and cedar, and something faintly warm, like bread baking in a room nearby. She was 41, twice Cecily's age, with gray at her temples and reading glasses pushed up into her hair, and she opened the door before Cecily had finished knocking, as though she had been standing on the other side. I was beginning to think you'd written yourself out of the idea, Vera said. I nearly had. Cecily looked at the sign. You changed the name again. The old one sounded like a law firm. Come in, I'll put the kettle on. Inside, the press took up most of the ground floor, a large flatbed press that Vera had bought secondhand from a Philadelphia printer and restored herself, surrounded by cases of type and stacks of paper, and the organized chaos of a woman who knew exactly where everything was, and would know instantly if anything moved. Upstairs was a sitting room, a small kitchen, and a bedroom that Vera had cleared out for Cecily with the matter-of-fact hospitality of someone who does not make a ceremony of necessity. The room's yours as long as you need it, Vera said, setting down the tea things. I won't ask questions you're not ready to answer. Imogen Reed told 14 dinner guests that Nathan chose me because a pretty wife is inconvenient, Cecily said. And there is iron in the north parcel of my father's land that no one mentioned during the negotiations. Vera set down the kettle. She sat. She looked at her cousin across the table with the particular look of a woman assembling several things she already knew. How long have you known about the iron? She said. I read it in a surveyor's report from 1798. It was in the estate documents my father left. I found it 8 months ago, and you didn't. I didn't know what to do with it. Cecily wrapped her hands around her cup. I still don't know what to do with it. I know what it means. I know someone new. I know that my father was approached with significant urgency in a period of financial vulnerability, and that the offer was structured in a way that left him very little time to think. She looked at the tea. I don't know if Nathan knew. Vera was quiet for a moment. What do you want to do? Cecily had been sitting with that question for the length of the carriage ride, and for the 8 months before it, And for 2 years before that, in the particular, silent way of a woman who has learned to let the important things wait for the right weather. I want to do something useful, she said. Something that is mine. Something that I am not doing in someone else's name. Vera looked at the press through the open door downstairs. I could use someone who knows how to keep accounts, she said carefully. And who can read a legal document without flinching. Cecily looked at her. I can do both, I know you can. I also know you didn't come here just to keep my accounts. No, Cecily said. I came because I needed to see what it looked like. What looked like? A woman running something. She met her cousin's eyes, without anyone's permission. Vera Ashton smiled. It was the smile of a woman who had heard a thing she had been waiting a long time to hear said out loud. Come down in the morning, she said. I'll show you the press. The work was not what Cecily had expected, which was the first thing about it she loved. She had expected to be useful in the way she was always useful. Organizing, scheduling, moving things from one column to another. Instead, Vera put her in front of the legal correspondence pile on the second morning and said, I'm being asked by 3 different clients to print documents that reference property transfers, and I'm not certain any of them are describing the same plot of land. Tell me what you see. Cecily looked at the documents. She looked at the survey maps Vera produced from a drawer. She spent 4 hours at the kitchen table with a pencil and a straight edge. When she was done, she had identified 2 overlapping claims on the same 40 acres of riverfront property, a discrepancy in the original grant bearing that had been quietly propagating through every subsequent deed, and the surveying error at its root. A misread compass heading from 20 years back, copied faithfully into document after document by people who had trusted the previous document. Vera looked at her work for a long time. You've done this before, she said. My father surveyed land before he farmed it. He taught me on Saturday mornings. Cecily set down her pencil. He said a woman who could read a map could find her way out of anything. Vera was quiet for a moment. Smart man, she said. He was, Cecily said. He just didn't see what he had in the north parcel, and someone made sure he didn't have time to look. Word moved through Harwick with the speed that word always moves through a small commercial town where everyone's business touches someone else's. By the end of the first week, 2 men had come to the press with property questions they phrased as printing inquiries, and gradually, over tea, revealed as what they actually were. Boundary disputes, contested transfers, a deed that didn't match what a grandfather had believed he'd been deeded. Cecily listened to all of them. She asked questions. She took her time. By the end of the second week, she had more work than she could manage in a month. Vera watched all of it from behind the press, pulling print runs with the focused competence of a woman who had learned to do her own work and let capable people do theirs. She didn't interfere. She brought tea at the right moments and left Cecily alone at the wrong ones, which is a more useful skill than it sounds. On the 12th night, when the last client had gone, and Cecily was sitting at the kitchen table, with her notes spread around her, and her hair loose and her sleeves rolled to the elbow, Vera sat down across from her and looked at her with the careful, collecting eyes of someone who has been waiting for the right moment. He had no idea, did he? Vera said. Not a question. Cecily looked up. Nathan? Yes. Cecily was quiet for a moment. She set down her pencil. He knew what I managed. He knew the household ran correctly, and the accounts were settled and the guests left satisfied. She paused. He didn't know why. He didn't ask, did you ever show him? Once. The first month. I showed him the quarterly budget I'd built and how I'd structured the household expenditure across the seasonal quarters. She looked at the table. He said it looked thorough. Then he went back to his correspondence. Vera looked at her. What did you feel? Cecily considered the question, the way she considered all important questions. Seriously, without rushing toward the comfortable answer. I felt, she said finally, like a clock someone had complimented on its face without noticing that it kept time. The letter from Nathan arrived on a Thursday morning. Not through the solicitor this time. His own hand, his own paper, the slightly cramped script he'd had since boyhood, and had never bothered to improve because it functioned well enough, and he was a man who did not often see the argument for exceeding what functioned. Cecily, the east chimney has been attended to. Mrs. Alderton says the correspondence is managing, but that there are several items she cannot authorize without your direction. I have told her to wait. The house is quiet. I hope Harwick is well. And she read it twice. She sat with it for a long time, with the morning light coming through Vera's kitchen window and the smell of the press ink rising from downstairs, and the particular weight of a letter that says almost nothing and means considerably more than it says. He noticed the quiet, she told Vera. Men always notice the quiet, Vera said, without looking up from the typecase she was organizing. It takes them longer to understand why the quiet is different. Cecily folded the letter. She put it in her pocket. She went back to work. She did not write back that day. She wrote back on Saturday. 4 sentences. Nathan, I am glad the chimney is addressed. Tell Mrs. Alderton she may authorize the coal order and the September linen payment. Those are straightforward. The correspondence beyond that can wait. I am busy. I will write again soon. She signed it C. and left it with the Morning Post, and did not let herself count the days. What she did not know, sitting at Vera's kitchen table, was that Nathan Reed was having a considerably worse 2 weeks than the letter suggested. He had come downstairs the morning after she left to find the house exactly as it had always been, orderly, managed, running. The fires were laid, breakfast was prepared, Mrs. Alderton was at her post. Nothing was wrong. That was the first sign that something was wrong. He had gone to his study and found his correspondence sorted in the precise way Cecily had always sorted it, because she had sorted it herself before she left, which he had not noticed until he reached for the second stack and found a note beneath it in her handwriting. Coal Merchant, September. Factor quarterly. Solicitor, wait until I return or write to Mr. Cottam directly. He had sat at his desk and read the note for a long time. He had told himself, that first week, that it was temporary, that Cecily was visiting a cousin, which women did, and would return refreshed, and the house would continue as it always had, and the arrangement would continue as it always had, which was to say well, smoothly, efficiently, without trouble. By the end of the second week he had stopped telling himself this. He had come down on a Wednesday evening to find his mother in the sitting room, with the account books open on the table, and an expression he recognized as the one she wore when she was finding things wanting. These accounts, she said without looking up, are Cecily's system. Yes, I cannot read Cecily's system. She turned a page. It is not that it is poorly done. It is clearly very well done. I simply cannot. The categories she uses are not centered. I know. Imogen looked up. Do you know her system? He said nothing. That was answer enough. His mother looked at him with the particular look she had never quite stopped using since he was 12. The look that said, I love you, and you have done something foolish, and I am waiting for you to see it yourself. Nathan, she said, and her voice was different, quieter, like something had been adjusted. What I said at the dinner party. Mother, let me finish. She closed the account book. I said it because I have said things like it for 20 years, and no one has ever told me the damage they do. She folded her hands on the table. I thought I was being clever. I thought I was saying something honest about the way the world works. She paused. I was saying it about your wife. In front of 14 people. To explain her existence. He was very still. She heard it, Imogen said. I know. She said nothing. Cecily never says nothing, Nathan said slowly. She says nothing and then she acts. I have known this for 2 years and I have not. He stopped. I did not ask enough questions. I did not look carefully enough at what was in front of me. He stood. He went to the window. Outside, the September garden was doing what it always did. Managing itself in the particular way it managed itself because Cecily had hired the right people and given them the right instructions in the spring, and the results were only now becoming visible in their full form. 3 seasons later. He had never thought about how that happened. She left a note, he said. I know, I read it. His mother paused. Nathan, the east chimney, the coal, the correspondence. She arranged all of it before she went. Yes, even in leaving she took care of the house. He turned from the window. He looked at his mother across the sitting room. This woman who had spent 20 years constructing him in her image, and who was now, with the careful deliberateness of someone disassembling a thing they had built wrong, looking at what she had made. I'm going to Harwick, he said. I thought you might be. I don't know what I'm going to say. Imogen was quiet for a moment, then. Tell her the truth. All of it, not the version that reflects well on you. He looked at his mother for a long moment. In 34 years, she had not said anything like that to him before. I didn't know about the iron, he said. In the Whitmore parcel. I need you to tell me if you did. A pause that was not long enough to be denial and not short enough to be innocence. I knew there were rumors, his mother said. Your father heard something, years before. He didn't confirm it. Nathan looked at her. The Whitmore situation was difficult, Imogen said, and her voice had changed again, stripped now of the tone she used when she was being careful, and left with something rawer underneath. Her father was going to lose the land to creditors. The offer we made was fair given what we knew. I told myself that, and the part you didn't know, the part I chose not to investigate. She met his eyes. There's a difference. And yes, I know the difference. The room was very quiet. She deserves to know, Nathan said. Yes, his mother said. She does. He rode to Harwick on a Thursday. 4 hours of road that gave him more than enough time to rehearse every version of what he might say and discard each one as inadequate. By the time the town appeared in the valley ahead of him, he had stopped rehearsing. He found the press on the river road without difficulty, the hand-lettered sign, the smell of ink, the sound of the flatbed running from somewhere inside. A woman he didn't recognize answered his knock with reading glasses on her nose, and the focused expression of someone who was in the middle of something, and had decided to be briefly interrupted. "Mr. Reed," she said, which meant Cecily had spoken of him. "Miss Ashton," he said. "I apologize for arriving without notice." "She's at the clerk's office," Vera said. "She's been reviewing the county deed records. She'll be back by 2. She looked at him the way people in Harwick had apparently learned to look at things, directly, without performance. "There's tea. You're welcome to wait." He waited. He drank the tea. At the press, at the stacks of type, at the correspondence piled on the work table in Cecily's handwriting, the same neat precise script he'd seen on account books and household notes, and the letter she'd left on his desk. There was more of her here, in 2 weeks, than he'd seen in 2 years. The work was spread across every surface. People had been here. Things had been solved. He was looking at a survey map on the wall. A detailed hand-drawn rendering of the Harwick River parcels with annotations in 2 different inks. When he heard her come in, she stopped in the doorway. He turned. The thing he noticed first, before she spoke, before her expression adjusted into anything composed or careful, was that she looked different. Not physically, the same face, the same bearing. But something in it had shifted. She had the look of a woman who had been given back something she'd been carrying without knowing it, and who was now holding it openly instead of folded inside her coat. "Nathan," she said. "Cecily." They stood for a moment in Vera Ashton's front room, with the press quiet between them and the river light coming through the window, and 2 years of things neither of them had said occupying all the available space. "You came," she said. "You said, in your letter, you said the chimney had been attended to." He paused. "I know that's not why you wrote." Something moved across her face, not quite a smile, something more careful. "Sit down," she said. "I'll make coffee. You look like you've been rehearsing things." He sat. She made coffee. She sat across from him at the work table and looked at him with the same clear, level look she had always had. The one that gave nothing away that she had not decided to give. And waited. "I owe you an apology," he said. She waited. "For what my mother said at the dinner party." "For not." He stopped. "I wasn't in the room. But I heard it, afterwards. Mrs. Hargreaves said something the following morning, at the gate. She thought she was being sympathetic." He looked at his hands. "I should have spoken to you. I did not. I told myself you hadn't mentioned it, which meant it hadn't landed, which I knew was not true." Cecily looked at him. "Why didn't you?" It was the right question, the only question. He had known she would ask it. "Because I was comfortable," he said. "Not with what she said. With the arrangement. With the way things ran. I understood the value of what you managed. I did not think very carefully about the person who was doing the managing." He met her eyes. "I looked at a clock and noticed that it kept good time. I did not think to ask whether it minded." She was very still. "There is also the matter of the north parcel," he said. She set down her cup. He told her everything, all of it. His mother's admission, the rumors about the iron, the decision not to investigate, the urgency of the original offer and what that urgency had been designed to do. He did not soften it. He did not frame it in the way that would have made him easier to forgive. When he finished, the room was quiet for a long time. "Did you know?" she asked. Not angry, just asking. "No, I have told myself that matters. I am not sure it does." He looked at her. "I had a comfortable arrangement that benefited from assumptions I did not examine. Not knowing is not the same as innocence." Cecily looked at him for a long moment. She was doing the thing she did when she was reading a survey map, looking for the true line, the honest bearing, the place where the measurement was accurate. "The north parcel," she said finally. "I want it transferred to my name. Whatever it produces, if it produces anything, goes to my account. Not the household. Mine, yes, and I want to work." She kept her eyes on his. "Not for you, not for the household. My own work. This," she gestured at the spread of papers on the table, "or something like it. Property surveys, deed reviews, the kind of work that has been here waiting for someone to do it correctly. I want to build it properly." Nathan. "I mean it," he said. "Yes, to all of it." He leaned forward slightly. "I have been in this town for 3 hours, and I have already been told, by your cousin, and by 2 men in the street who appear to know your name, that you resolved a property dispute that has been running for 8 years. In 2 weeks." He looked at her. I have been sitting in a well-managed house for a month trying to understand why it felt wrong without you in it. And it is not the house. She looked at him. It is not the accounts, he said. It is not the coal order or the correspondence or the east chimney. It is specifically, distinctly you. He stopped. I have lived with you for 2 years and I did not know you. I knew what you did. I did not know what you thought about, what you read, what you studied at the kitchen table late at night when you believed I was in my study and not in the hall, hearing the scratch of your pencil through a closed door. He looked at his hands. I did not ask. I am asking now. Vera had gone out at some point. Neither of them had noticed. Cecily stood. She went to the window. She stood with her back to him for a moment, not escaping, just needing the small distance of standing, the particular clarity that came from looking out at something that was not his face. She thought about the morning she had signed the last document in Whitmore House. She thought about the dinner party, and the weight of her cup in her hand, while she looked at the garden latch. She thought about the 12 days in this room, the feel of the work, the maps on the wall, the men and women who had come with their tangled claims and left with something clarified. She thought about what her father had said on a Saturday morning with a bad cup of coffee between them. A woman who can read a map can find her way out of anything. She turned around. I'm not coming back tomorrow, she said. I know, I have commitments here, 3 cases still outstanding. A survey review I promised to complete by the end of the month. Yes, when I come back. She paused. If I come back, it is not back to what it was. The arrangement as it was is finished. If that is not something you can live with, we should say so now. Nathan looked at her with the straightforward, undefended attention she had waited 2 years to receive. The look of a man who was actually present. I can live with it, he said. I want to. She held his gaze for a long moment. Stay for supper, she said at last. Vera will be back. Talk to her. See what this place is. She moved toward the door of the room. And I will think about what I want to tell you. That's all. For now, she said. That is everything there is. His mother arrived 10 days later. No letter ahead. Just a hired coach and the particular expression Cecily recognized from 2 years of breakfast tables. The composed, armored face of a woman prepared to manage something. Except something was different. Imogen Reed stepped out of the coach on the river road and looked at the sign above the door of Vera Ashton's press. And then she looked at Cecily, who was standing on the step with her arms at her sides and her chin level, and no trace of the woman who had stood at a window, pretending to check a latch, and something in Imogen's expression shifted. I owe you a conversation, Imogen said. In person. I owe you that. Cecily looked at her for a moment, then she stepped back and held the door open. Come in, she said. I'll put the kettle on. They sat at Vera's kitchen table. The press was quiet. Nathan had gone to speak with the clerk's office about the transfer documents. The morning light was flat and good. I wrote to you before your wedding, Imogen said. I want to talk about that, all right. I told myself it was honesty, that I was giving you accurate expectations. She looked at her hands. I have been telling myself that for 3 years. It has become more difficult to maintain. She paused. What I was actually doing was telling a 23-year-old woman, before she had walked through the door, that she should not expect to matter. And then I spent 2 years ensuring that she had no reason to revise that expectation. Cecily said nothing. She sat and waited. I underestimated you, Imogen said. I looked at a quiet girl from a diminished family and I thought I understood entirely what I was seeing. She met Cecily's eyes. I did not understand at all. The kitchen was very still. The north parcel, Cecily said. You knew. I knew there was a possibility. Imogen's jaw was set. I told myself that the arrangement was still fair. Your father's situation was real. The debt was real. We gave your family stability. She paused. That is also true. And the other thing is also true. Both are true at the same time. Yes, Cecily, they are. Imogen looked at her. Something in her face came down. Not completely, not carelessly, but enough. The architecture of a woman who had been managing a room for 40 years, adjusted briefly into something underneath it. I brought papers, she said. I had them prepared before I left. The iron revenue from the north parcel, whatever comes of it, goes to you, not to the household. Your name. She produced a folded document from her coat. It's already signed. Cecily looked at the document. She looked at Imogen. You did this before you came, she said. Yes. Why? Imogen's chin lifted slightly. Because it was right, she said, as though that were the entire answer. And because I am 3 years late, and the least I could do was not make you ask for it. Cecily held the document for a long moment. She thought about the survey report she had found in her father's estate papers. The 1798 record, the numbers she had read and reread 8 months ago in the small hours of a night when Nathan was asleep, and the house was exactly as managed as it always was. "Thank you," she said. Imogen nodded once. "Don't thank me." Her voice was level. "Just use it well, I believe you will." They were all four at supper that evening, Cecily and Vera. Nathan and Imogen. In Vera's sitting room, with the press quiet below, and the river visible through the window, and a meal that Vera had assembled, with the cheerful practicality of someone who considers hospitality a logistical problem and not a performance. It was Margaret, and here Cecily stopped herself, because she was thinking of her father's phrase, not anyone's name. It was the simple fact of the four of them at a table, talking with something approaching honesty for the first time, that made the thing real. Imogen and Vera discovered, within 20 minutes, that they had both been running commercial enterprises for over 15 years, and had both been managing the assumption that they didn't know what they were doing. The discovery produced a conversation that went on for an hour and a half, and required Nathan and Cecily to simply sit back and let it happen. Nathan watched his wife across the table. He watched her listen, comment, push back when she disagreed. He watched her laugh. Not the polite laughter of a dinner party, but the real thing, surprised and unmanaged, when Vera said something dry about a particularly stubborn client. He watched her be entirely and without management herself. She caught him watching. "What?" she said. "Nothing," he said. "I'm making a list." She looked at him. Something shifted in her expression. "Of what?" "Of things I didn't know." He met her eyes. "What you read, what makes you laugh, what you were studying at the kitchen table at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday, while I sat in my study thinking the house was quiet." She was quiet for a moment. "Property law," she said, "and the history of land grants in the eastern counties. And sometimes very late, when I can't sleep." She paused. "Poetry, who?" She tilted her head slightly. "You're serious?" "Yes," she told him. He listened with the full, unhurried attention she had spent 2 years waiting for. He did not summarize. He did not offer opinions. He listened with the look she was beginning to think of as his recalibrating expression, the one that appeared when something had shifted his understanding of something and he was making room for it. They did not resolve everything that night. They were not supposed to. 2 years of quiet damage does not resolve over a supper table, and Cecily had no interest in the version of resolution that skips the work. But something had been said that could not be unsaid, in the good sense. The sense of a truth that, once spoken, changes the shape of the room permanently. She came back to Aldenmere on a Saturday 3 weeks later, not because she was ready to stop the work in Harwick. She wasn't, and she didn't pretend otherwise. She came back because she had finished what she needed to finish there for the moment, and because Vera had a standing arrangement for her to return in November, and because there was a property survey in the Aldenmere County records that had been incorrectly filed for 12 years, and that she had promised the clerk she would review, and because, she admitted to herself, sitting in the carriage as the gates of Aldenmere appeared ahead, she had chosen to come back. That distinction mattered. She had chosen. There was no obligation, no debt, no economic reality pressing her back through the door. She had made a decision, and the decision was hers. Nathan was at the door when she arrived. He had not been waiting. He had been working. She could tell. There was ink on his left hand, and he had the slightly unfocused look of a man called back from correspondence. But he had heard the carriage and he had come, and he looked at her on the front step with an expression that was entirely unguarded. "Good journey?" he said. "Long," she said, "but good." He took her bag. He stood back for her. She walked in. The house was exactly as it had always been, orderly, managed, exactly right. The correspondence was sorted on the hall table. The coal smell was correct for September. The roses from the back garden were in a vase on the entry table, white and pale gold, a little past their peak, but someone had trimmed them and put them in water. She looked at the roses. "Mrs. Alderton said you liked them in September," Nathan said from behind her. She looked at him. "You told her to do that?" "Yes." She looked back at the roses for a moment. Such a small thing, such a specific small thing. "I am setting up a proper office," she said, "in the East Room. It has the right light and it is close to the account room, which I will need access to for the survey work. I will need the county deed records brought over from Aldermere Town. Before the end of the month I'll arrange it. And I am going back to Harwick in November, for 2 weeks, possibly 3. "I know. You told me. I am telling you again," she said. "So we are both clear that it is settled." "It is settled," he said. "Cecily." She looked at him. "I am glad you came home." She held his gaze for a moment. This careful, sensible man who was learning, slowly and without pretense, how to look at her. Not at the arrangement, at her. "Show me the East Room," she said. "I want to see the light." He showed her. And that, The two of them standing in the east room of Aldenmere in the September afternoon light, measuring the angle of the windows, talking about where a desk should go and whether the shelving would hold deed records or need to be reinforced, was where it began. Not a reconciliation, exactly. Not a love story, precisely. Something more honest than either of those words suggests. Two people who had been living alongside each other deciding, with full knowledge of what they had and what they had failed at and what they were building instead, to actually begin. She put her desk against the east wall. She had the deed records delivered. She opened the first file. She had work to do, and she did it, in her own room, in her own name, on her own terms. That was enough. That was, she understood, sitting in the good September light with the property survey open on the desk that was finally hers, more than enough. It was everything.